Hi, everyone. Once again, my name is Blair Embry. I'm the Community Engagement Manager for Prison Yoga Project. And I'm so excited to be here today to be celebrating James Fox's 20 years of service. So one of the reasons today we're joining is to celebrate 20 years of going into San Quentin. So thank you so much, James, for being here. And I'm going to read a bio of James, and then he's going to lead us in a centering opportunity as well. James Fox, MACYT, is the founder of Prison Yoga Project. He is a certified yoga instructor who has dedicated himself to developing a trauma-informed approach to teaching yoga in correctional facilities that has resulted in the establishment of yoga programs in prisons throughout the U.S., Mexico, Europe, and Australia. A practitioner of yoga and mindfulness meditation for more than 30 years, upon receiving his teaching credentials in 2000, James began his mission of sharing the benefits of yoga with incarcerated people. James has taught yoga classes at San Quentin Prison since 2002. He is also trained in restorative justice principles and practices and has experience facilitating victim offender education, emotional literacy, and violence prevention courses with prisoners. He is the author of Yoga for a Path of Healing and the Recovery, and the co-author of Freedom from the Inside, A Woman's Yoga Practice Guide. James, thank you so much for being here.
Well, welcome everybody. So I thought we'd do just a simple centering practice. I'm not going to get up and do a lot of movement. Pretty much going to try to share with you part of a regular practice that I do. And, when you look at the 8 limbs of yoga and you look at pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and as I like to say, if you're lucky, samadhi, I always feel that requires a certain amount of stillness in our practice, really being able to develop this capacity to be still and to drop into ourselves. And so it helps to move before you do that. So I just invite you just to do whatever movement feels comfortable for you, to prepare yourself to sit quietly. And excuse me. As you do that, see if you can bring awareness into your breathing as you move. So it's not just you're moving disconnected with an awareness of breathing. And then when you feel prepared, when you feel ready, you can allow yourself to sit still. And if it feels right to you, you can let your eyes close. And see if you can bring your awareness into a felt sense of your body as you're seated here. You might begin by feeling the felt sense of your feet in contact with the floor, or if you're sitting cross-legged, just the felt sense of your legs, one leg in touch with the other leg. Maybe taking your hands and just gently rubbing your legs, your thighs, or your lower legs to get this felt sense of your legs. And then feeling your arms as well. Maybe moving your arms a little bit or shaking your hands out to get a felt sense of your arms attached to your torso, your shoulders. Felt sense of your head. Perhaps you move your head around in circles or from side to side to get a feeling of your head, the weight of the head on your body. And then seeing if you can come to a still point. And what remains of any movement when you come to a still point is the movement that you might feel in your body as you breathe. So bringing awareness to breathing for a moment, just see if you can smooth out your breathing. So there's no choppiness, there's no interruption in your breathing. And just see if you can let your body breathe itself. Just connect with the rhythm of your breathing. And you can breathe in and out of your nose. You can breathe in your nose and out your mouth. You can breathe whatever feels most comfortable and natural to you. And as you breathe, see if you can keep your stomach relaxed. So the belly is relaxed. And see if you can allow your belly to receive your breath. So as you inhale, you might feel the expansion of your belly. And as you exhale, maybe you feel the contraction of your belly. Just taking 3 more breaths like that with awareness of the movement of your belly as you breathe. And then see if you can bring your attention, bring your awareness to the movement of your chest as you breathe, movement of your chest and your ribs. And see if you can feel how the ribs move, your chest moves as you inhale, how the chest moves as you exhale. Receiving your breath at your chest and your ribs. Just taking a couple of more breaths with awareness of breathing at the chest and the ribs. And then see if you can breathe in and out of your nose as you bring awareness to your nostrils and feeling the breath at the nostrils, feeling the air as it enters your nose as you inhale, and your breath as it leaves your nose as you exhale. Again, just natural movement of your breathing, your own rhythm of breathing. And then on your next 5 breaths, see if you can slow your exhale down and very slowly exhale all the air out of your nose before you inhale. Just 5 breaths. Take your time, stay with that exhale, slowly, slowly exhaling all the air out your nose. And then after your 5th exhale, just letting go and just returning to no control of the breath. Just 2 or 3 more breaths of feeling this body that you live in breathe. And then when you're ready, If you had your eyes closed, you could let your eyes open. Just feel if that made any difference to you. If you feel more settled, I do. I can sense it in my voice, and I can feel it. The whole purpose of that, I can feel it inside myself, a settling. And this is particularly important to me. I'm recovering from COVID. I'm on the backside of having had COVID. When we started out, I didn't feel particularly sharp. I feel much more present now as a result of doing that short practice. That is my main practice. And you could call that practice, for those of you who've done this with me before, anapanasati, which is feeling sensations in your body as you breathe. To me, that is mindfulness. That is mindfulness practice. I think that too often in practicing mindfulness, awareness is brought to the breath without awareness of feeling the body breathe. Anapanasati is a sutra from the Buddha that the Buddha gave, that felt sensations in your body as you breathe. And in that sutra, he mentioned that can lead to nirvana. And as I always like to say, that's not why I do the practice. I do the practice to center myself and to feel anchored within myself. And typically, in the morning, I start my morning out by doing a short practice, and I do a dynamic breathing practice also. I typically do a short, maybe 10, 15-minute practice, followed by another 10 to 15-minute dynamic breathing practice. That's my usual routine. So in thinking about this, first of all, welcome to everybody. I really appreciate the fact that you would take the time, particularly Sonia, you at 2:00 in the morning in Australia, would take the time to be with me. And to be honest with you, I feel a little self-conscious about it. I feel like it kind of draws a lot of attention on me, that I've done this service for 20 years. I've done what I've been called to do. And to me, it's really not that special of a thing. And the other thing that I realize about it, 20 years of service to the Prison Yoga Project, when I really sink into it, you are as much a Prison Yoga Project as I am. I couldn't do what I do if it wasn't for you. I know the difference from having started out 20 years ago. Yes, I was part of an organization. I was part of the Insight Prison Project. So I was part of a team, but it's nothing like the team that I'm a part of now, that includes each and every one of you who have dedicated yourself to doing this work. So I really don't separate myself from you in terms of, oh, look at me and look what I've done. Again, Prison Yoga Project wouldn't be where it is today if it wasn't for you. If it wasn't for the core staff of the Prison Yoga Project, but all of you. And I like to say, this kind of dawned on me a couple of years ago, that I really feel that the Prison Yoga Project is a cooperative. It's a cooperative of energy, of our energy that's dedicated to being of service through yoga, through embodiment, and through mindfulness to incarcerated people and other people who are struggling with issues related to trauma. So I put my arms around you. I wish you were here. I put my arms around you, although you probably wouldn't want me to do that because I'm recovering from COVID. I'm not positive, but nonetheless, I put my arms around you and I want to thank you. I want to thank you for being part of the Prison Yoga Project. So with that being said, I'm open to this dialogue, this time that we're going to spend together, and Blair's going to lead us in our conversation.
Thank you so much for sharing that, James, and that really amazing centering opportunity. It was making me miss prajna sessions. I really love when you take the seat of the teacher. And thank you for really listening to your Dharma and leading and carving a path in a way that allowed us to all follow. And James and I were talking about this yesterday too, is that it's such a beautiful community that's created that's mutually beneficial in a way that doing this work can feed us and our families, and we're supporting other people as well as disrupting a system that we know that causes harm. So it feels good to be part of this community, and it feels good to have purpose in this way. So thank you for creating the foundation really for us to be able to do that and to serve in that way.
So I want to make a distinction about something that you said. And I think, and this is kind of important to establish this in the beginning. I want to make the distinction between following and enjoining, because I don't feel comfortable with being followed. I love being enjoined. And I acknowledge that enjoining is you bring your gifts along with my gifts to create what it is that we're creating. And I'm serious about this. I'm not just spilling here. I'm very serious about this, that I want to acknowledge the gift that each one of you brings to this work, to your life, to your Dharma. It's every bit as important. It is every bit as vital as mine. So I just want to be really clear about that.
Thank you. And it's that's giving power back to people. So thank you for making the differentiation. What's your first memory of yoga, James?
Oh, my first memory of yoga was I used to be a middle distance runner. As a youngster, I was very much involved in sports. I went from one season to the next, growing up in Chicago, and the friends that I had, we were all involved in sports. So it was baseball to basketball and football, played some hockey during the winter, and that became an outlet for me. I mean, sports was an outlet. It was really my orientation of embodiment, of being involved in my body. And so I consider, I wasn't the greatest athlete. I was okay. I could play just about every sport reasonably well, but I wasn't the greatest athlete. But just the outlet and the opportunity to be engaged with my body, I think it really, really balanced me out. And so I carried that on into my adulthood. And I was a middle distance runner. I used to live near Golden Gate Park, and I lived in the upper Haight-Ashbury. And I'd leave my house and I'd run through Golden Gate Park down to the beach and back. It was about an 8-mile round tripper. And over time, what happened was I had an injury in my back. I pinched a nerve in my back, and I would back off of running. And if you're a runner, to back off of running for 2 or 3 weeks is really difficult. But I would back off for 2 or 3 weeks, and then I'd go back to running, and the pinched nerve would come back. So I had some friends who were saying to me, you should try yoga. And I said, yoga? I mean, come on, yoga's not for guys. I mean, gosh, it's hard for me to even say that now. But that was my response. And finally, I guess I had to suffer enough where I finally went to an Iyengar yoga class with a friend of mine. And I had already had a meditation practice. I had been introduced to mindfulness in probably 1980, 1981. And I realized, well, this is like meditation, but is moving. You're moving, you're focusing on your body, you're focusing on your breath, and you move into a different realm. And so that's what initially, first of all, the relief from pain that I had been experiencing, and the fact that this provided me an opportunity to center myself, to drop into myself. So that was really my initial experience. And then as I continued to dedicate myself to yoga, and it was parallel to other healing work that I was doing on myself, healing from my own traumas, from my own childhood trauma and complex trauma that I had kind of dedicated myself to. So it was parallel to some other kind of work that I was doing, basically Gestalt type work. And it really helped a lot. And so then it started to become, oh, this is my go-to. In addition to other kinds of movement, in terms of staying active with other kinds of things that I was doing, yoga became kind of my go-to to really care for myself. And I was, I think we're going to get into this, but I was in the wine business. I was a marketing executive in the wine business. So I would go to an office during the day doing my marketing executive work. And then after that, I would go to a yoga studio and practice yoga. And then I also did retreats. And there was a period of time where I had my own business also. I was a brand development guy in the wine and the microbrewery business. And so I had a lot more free time then, and I did a fair amount of retreats and workshops. And the more I got involved in yoga, the closer I got to what my heart's desire was calling out for. And the more I began to realize that what I was doing in the world was not nourishing this most important, vital part of myself. So, Blair, you and I have been talking about this yesterday and saying that part of this, for lack of a better term, part of the spiritual path, if you're called to it, is discovering what your dharma is. To me, dharma is, what's my purpose for being alive, connected to my spiritual well-being, my spiritual evolution. And there was this voice, there was this calling within me of like, hey, brother, you've got work to do, and it's not turning people on to wine and micro beer. I mean, it's something, it has something to do with serving your fellow human being, your brothers and your sisters and your brothers. And I had no idea what it was. But I knew that I had this calling within me was not leaving me alone. And it led me to realize I've got to let go of this path of so-called success that I was conditioned to follow. I was this rising star in the wine business. I was talking to you yesterday, and I said, the defining moment in my life was when I was very close to being offered the job as president of Stag's Leap Winery in Napa Valley, one of the premier wineries in Napa Valley. And I had felt very conflicted about even going to the interviews and realizing, if I take this job, that's it. I mean, I'm going to move to the Napa Valley, and it's not a commitment that one makes lightly. It's a long-term commitment. And here's my choice point right now. Do I do this, or do I do what my heart has been asking me to do, which is leave this behind and go forward into the unknown? And that's what I did. And it was not easy, and it was challenging. And I had two children. And so I was helping to support my two children. So I was making a choice of kind of jumping into, well, I have no income. What am I going to do? So I had to figure out different things to do to make a living while I created the space. It was simply creating the space to really go, okay, now this is my life. This spaciousness is my life, to see what emerges out of this spaciousness in terms of how can this inner yearning of mine manifest itself. And it didn't come right away. So I had a prayer, and I still have a prayer. It's a little different today. I have lots of prayers, but I have a prayer where I ask for guidance. And at that time, I would ask for guidance. My prayer would be to the universe, to a greater power, to my higher power, to infinite spirit, to great spirit. Can you help guide me? What is this path? I don't know what it is, but I'm willing. And when you put that prayer out, then you need to be prepared to listen to the answer. You may not like the answer, but it was one step after the other. And I had this commitment to yoga and to mindfulness. And so when I decided to become a teacher and to become certified as a teacher, I was very, very clear. This was in 2000. It might have been in 1999. I was very clear. I'm not interested in teaching yoga in a yoga studio. I don't want to make my living as a yoga teacher. I'm going to do other things to me. By this time, I had gotten into the nutritional supplement business. And I was nice transition from wine to nutritional supplements. So I was very clear. I want to become a yoga teacher to bring yoga to people who aren't being exposed to yoga. And again, I didn't know how that was going to manifest. And then Penny, my wife, said, well, what about Full Circle? So there was a residential treatment facility for boys 12 to 18 years old who've been court ordered into this residential treatment facility in Bolinas, in the town that I live in. And she said, why don't you go there and offer a yoga program? And so I did. And it wasn't accepted right away, but finally it was accepted. So I started a yoga program at Full Circle, and I taught a community class in Bolinas, in the town that I live in. And very quickly things started to happen. I mean, the first thing that happened was that I had this feeling, this intuition within me that these boys were troubled boys. Almost all of them were on medication. They were all getting cognitive behavioral therapeutic services. And I, from my own experience, was convinced, yeah, but what about the body? What about their bodies? These are young men. They need to be engaged in their bodies. This was before I knew anything about trauma. But it was just this intuitive feeling of they got to work with their bodies. They've got to work with their bodies, not only as young men, but in order to basically what I understand now is to discharge a lot of the stuff that they were dealing with, not to mention to stay in balance with the medication they were taking and everything. And very quickly, it was very clear to me, yeah, this works. And then what happened was very shortly after that, there was a guy who found out about me, who was a mindfulness teacher, and he was going into juvenile halls, and he was teaching seated meditation to young people in juvenile halls. And he said, hey, could you possibly help us out? And I said, yeah, definitely. So I started then working with, it was called Youth Horizons. And this was all 2 years before San Quentin. So I started going into juvenile halls and started, which was the hardest work I've ever done, by the way. So any of you who are working with youth, my hat's off to you. It's really tough work. And then this man who started the Inside Prison Project, Jacques Verdun, he and I knew each other through Spirit Rock Meditation Center. He's a therapist, and he was a therapist who was starting a rehabilitation program at San Quentin that had 4 main pillars: violence prevention, victim offender education, emotional literacy, and mind-body integration. And so he asked me, would I come in and be the champion for mind-body integration? And so we launched Inside Prison Project at San Quentin in 2002. And then what happened was, as time went on, the Inside Prison Project grew. We had 20 classes a week at San Quentin. And we needed facilitators for the violence prevention program, for the victim offender education program. So then what happened was I became trained and certified as a violence prevention facilitator, as a victim offender education facilitator. So at any given time, I was teaching yoga every week, and then I had one of those other groups that I was working with. And those were minimal year-long groups. And oftentimes they were all voluntary. Oftentimes I would have guys in one of those groups who were also in the yoga group. And I could see that the men who were in violence prevention or victim offender education and also in yoga were advancing in their understanding of their own behavioral change. It was very, very clear to me that mind-body integration piece, and it was being fed back to me as well. And then that led me to writing my book, which was in 2009, because I had the participants in the program who were either being released or were saying to me, geez, I'd like to have something to kind of guide me when I don't come to class. And so that's when I wrote the book in 2009. And then in 2010, when published the book and started sending it out, Give Back Yoga Foundation became our nonprofit sponsor. So that gives you 12 years of experience.
I'm just finding the link right now for our book, but I'll ask you the next question while I find this link. Which is exciting, is that we became our own nonprofit last year. This year?
2020. I think it was 2021. 2021. It might have been 2020. Bill would confirm that.
Maybe Bill can hop in the comments if he's around. Which is incredible. And I really love this piece that you're speaking to, is that there was an integration piece with the 2 programs, right? That you saw the people that were in both programs, that when they used the body, it was, it offered integration. for the other work that they were doing.
Absolutely.
And I had no idea that you started with youth.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And
I used to teach, interestingly enough, so Marin County is one of the wealthiest counties in California, and which is where San Quentin is, by the way, Marin County. Marin County Juvenile Hall was horrendous. The staff was horrendous there. And I used to teach a class there on Friday nights. And the young people who were detained there had a choice. You can either stay locked up from 6:30 to 7:30 every Friday night, or you can go to the yoga class. And the yoga class was in the day room. There were no props. And so the whole practice was done either seated or standing, and it was mixed. Boys and girls, or young men and young women. And it was a free-for-all. And I used to leave there. I'd go out to my car and I'd sit in the car and I'd go, oh my God, what am I doing? This is torture. But it was great. It was a great challenge. And
I love the visual of you just sitting silently in your car processing. So you're going in with Insight Prison Project and you become a facilitator, and I would love to hear even more about, victim offender training. But so then you're starting to go in and you're facilitating yoga at San Quentin. So how does Prison Yoga Project become, how is it born? Because then you go on to train thousands of people around the world. So I would love to hear that.
Let me back up just a moment, because I think this is also really important. And I just want to share how much it influenced me. Part of the violence prevention curriculum and part of the violence prevention training focused on, in working with men, focused on what was called the male role belief system. So the man who started the training that I did, his name is Hamish Sinclair, a Scottish guy who had moved to the US and had lived in the Bay Area, and had created this 52-week program called Man Alive. And it became the standard program for a person who had been convicted of domestic violence. And as part of their probation, they had to take this 52-week course. And so that was the primary, and its origins come from something called the Duluth, as like Duluth, Minnesota, the Duluth method or something like that. So an integral part of that training and understanding was the male role belief system. And what the male role belief system represents is how you, as a gender identified, gender born male, how you were conditioned to be as a male, how you were conditioned to be in your family, how you were conditioned to be in your community, how you were conditioned to be in the society that you grew up in as a male. And it had everything to do with understanding how you're supposed to think as a male, how you're supposed to act as a male, and how this male role belief system can lead to violent behavior. So some of the, and then you broke it all apart in terms of, from there, you started to dive into, as part of the process of this program, where did your violence begin? How did your violence begin? What made you think it was okay to be violent? The different kinds of violence, emotional violence, physical violence, nonverbal violence, all these different understandings of violence. And then kind of taking apart certain aspects of the male role belief system. For instance, if you're a man, you need to be in control. That was like a big one. Now, if I can sit back and I can go, okay, for all of the women who are on this call, who have had to relate with all different kinds of men, not just men with men, but I'm talking much more about women's relationship with men. When I say to you that one of the main aspects of the male role belief system is you've got to be in control, I would venture to say that you know this better than I do. I mean, I've been around a lot of males who need to be in control. And you look at our society and you look at the dynamics of so-called power in this country, and you look at white male privilege, and you look at, and it's male role belief system is so embedded. It's so embedded. And what comes out of that male role belief system, if you believe in that, if you're conditioned to be that way, there's a female role belief system, which is you support the male role belief system as a female. So if you that's what your role is, to support the male being in control, to support the male being in charge of finances, being in charge of the home, it's I can feel it as I talk about it. I feel it in my gut. I feel a churning and an upset in my stomach because it still is so prevalent in society. So my introduction to this was in the training. And as part of the training, I went to a group that met every week, a group of people who had been court ordered into this program, and sat with the group. And in the beginning, I thought, well, this is part of my training. I have to go to this group as part of my training. I have to go every week as part of this group. And one of the things that you do in this group is you identify what's called your hit man. You give your hit man a name. And I remember some of the names from guys in groups at San Quentin and everything. My hit man is Thrasher. My hit man is Knuckles. My hit man is, Colt 45 or whatever their hit man is, right? And I remember when we were going around the circle when I first was in this group, and everybody was to identify their hit man. And as it kept getting closer and closer to me, I was like, gee, I thought I was coming here because this was required of my training. I grew up totally in the male role belief system. My conditioning was male role belief system. My hit man was, I called it, all of a sudden it was my turn and I went, Old Yeller. That my way of being violent was raising my voice and yelling. That was my main way of. So this just became so important for me to understand that this male role belief system, how prevalent it is among men in general, how prevalent it is among incarcerated men. Also understanding that you have those people who are incarcerated and those people who are in charge of those people who are incarcerated, and how often they share this same male role belief system: control, 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 control. And no wonder the prison environment is so volatile. Not just incarcerated people among incarcerated people, but incarcerated people dealing with staff and the orientation that staff come from. And then the fact that women, particularly in that kind of a control, because it's all control, right? custody staff, it's all about control. So how the women who are involved just basically adopt the same system. So I just, this male role belief system, I think, is like super, super important for all of us to understand in terms of this is the environment that we walk into. And at its core, yoga offers the opportunity to become more sensitive to oneself. The peeling off of the layers of the initial getting in touch with yourself. Having a felt sense of your body begins this process of sensitivity, of self-sensitivity that can lead to a greater emotional awareness, emotional literacy, kindness, empathy, that we're kind of like, we're offering an opportunity to peel off the layers that have everything to do with getting in touch with oneself and developing a more sensitive relationship with oneself. Mm. So, yeah, there's a lot there. There's a lot there. There's a lot there. And of course, this is just ongoing.
And I think this brings me to the next kind of piece I wanted to tie in is the trauma-informed lens that we bring to facilitation, because it's really interesting when you're talking about control from a male belief system and you're saying you felt it in your gut. I feel it in my chest. I feel a claustrophobia that happens right in a female identified body. So I feel this. And I think so much of trauma-informed facilitation is that autonomy is being aware and giving power back to the person. So will you talk about that connection of the trauma-informed lens of our work?
Yeah. So, we're making an attempt, knowing what it is that we know about different kinds of yoga practices and embodiment practices. We're making an attempt to share some practices and some skills and some tools with people to help relieve the symptoms that they're experiencing from trauma. And it can go back to developmental trauma on top of complex interpersonal trauma, on top of the trauma that they're experiencing being incarcerated. And exactly what you just did, Blair. Imagine yourself being incarcerated and being under that control all the time. What that feels like. Like it is oppression. You're being oppressed. You're being oppressed. You're being held. The actual English term. You are being held. You're being oppressed. And so one of the things that comes to mind when you begin to practice yoga and it becomes, I'm beginning to practice yoga and be with myself. And you start to get the feeling, regardless of the fact that I'm being held, I'm still in charge of my own body. That at our very core of existence is the body that we live in. And they can't take that away from you. And even if you're in a confined environment, you've still got your body to work with. And that's a super, I mean, if I was incarcerated and I was, let's say, an incarcerated person who came from the kind of backgrounds that most incarcerated people come from, and someone was saying to me, you still have your body, regardless of the fact that you're being held in prison, you still have your body. It takes some time to even get to that place to actually acknowledge and understand that, because there is such a disconnection with the body given the environment that you live in. Everything about the environment can disconnect oneself from a felt sense of their bodies. And keep somebody on alert. So keep somebody from that outside influence of control and abuse. Violation. So it's not, it's not like, I firmly believe in the work that we do. I firmly believe that for many, many people, it really works. It's not the cure-all. It's not like I think it's important for us to keep in perspective with every person that we're dealing with, how complex it is, how complex it really is. And then, particularly if you're working in a class, you're not working one-on-one with an individual, unless you're lucky like Josephine, where she gets to actually go into ADSEG at Kumla Prison and work one-on-one with people. But still, it's just a short window of time. But we don't have that opportunity. We're working in a group. So we're trying to maximize benefits, minimize harm, provide these tools and skills that we know have proven to be effective to a group of people, and hope that it has an effect.
I think that's a great thing to point out is being in the room. There's so much unknown and unsaid of people's lived experience for years that has brought them to that space. Right. And we're offering tools, but it's in no way, a savior in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's where the really understanding karma yoga is. We put forth our best effort and we let go of an attachment to the outcome. And we do everything to support ourselves in being able to provide the skills, meaning our own practice and doing our own work. You and I talked yesterday about, you had said to me, well, what about 20 years of going in and out of prisons and, experiencing the suffering? There's no way that you don't experience the suffering if you're awake and open, and that it really necessitates being willing to meet suffering, being willing, as I say, to have your heart broken, to see the injustices, to see the hardships, to see the suffering. And one of the things that you had said to me, well, then how do you avoid burnout? And And I had mentioned to you that I have really good friends who say to me, I don't know how you can do what you do. I couldn't do that. I couldn't go in there. It's too heavy and so on and so forth. And my feeling is, yeah, well, you don't get it. You don't get the richness of being willing to meet the suffering, to being willing to go into an environment like that and to reap the personal rewards of being able to do that work. And and you and I were talking about this, the number one thing to avoid burnout is, number one, it's not me who's doing the work. I'm not invested in James Fox's guy trying to be somebody to go into prison and be the yoga man. It's work that's being done through me, that through my practice and through my work, I realize, and I think all of us realize this, everybody that I'm talking to, is it's almost like you drop into a different vein. And the ego person disappears and you are that, like that Nisargadatta great book. I am that kind of inexplicable energy. And that's what provides the healing opportunity, not James Fox, not like, oh, look at me and look what I'm doing. And then the second thing that avoids the burnout is the richness of establishing relationships with people. And being offered the opportunity to establish relationships with people who, in my former life, my former world, never would have had the opportunity to have established relationships. And then there's that fine line of, okay, you establish relationships, but you're the person going in from the outside. You're the yoga facilitator going in from the outside. So there's another important factor of being aware of the dynamics, the hierarchy dynamics of you're coming in from the outside and being very much aware and cognizant of the fact that there's a responsibility that comes with that. There's an equanimity issue that comes with that, of meeting people where they are and being humble and being non-egotistical. I mean, it's like we're doing we're doing this because this is what we're supposed to be doing. What I talk about, the voice inside me, the voice inside you is what has motivated you to do whatever it is that you're doing. It's the voice inside you that you're being true to. And then part of being true to that is staying dedicated to your practice. So a lot of dedication. If you're dedicated to making money, you probably make a lot of money. But this is a different kind of dedication. This Father Thomas Keating, who was one of the founders of centering prayer in the Catholic, I did a workshop with him one time, and he said, "This is the kind of wealth that pays dividends in the karma savings account." I don't know, karma. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I do it because it feels like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I feel fulfilled. And I feel so grateful to have been given this opportunity. I feel, I've said this, I feel like I'm one of the luckiest people on earth that I've been given this opportunity. And
thank you, James. In the comments, I just wanted to read this out loud. Delaney says, burnout versus vicarious trauma, which is a great, I I think probably a conversation in itself, right? Seems like understanding trauma aids resilience in social justice work. And I yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it necessarily prevents vicarious trauma, but I do think it's supportive, right? And like James was saying too, like having your own practice is supportive.
Having your own practice and having your own people, having your Sangha that you get, which is, something that the Prison Yoga Project really offers, is that when you come up against the tough stuff, it's not that you just handle it yourself, that you need to have a Sangha and you need to have people that you can go to who understand what it is that you're going through and what you're experiencing.
And to speak to that too, so any of our facilitators that are on the call, we have, I think they're at least once a month, and let me pull up our event calendar. We offer like peer visiting hours, basically. So if you're a facilitator with Prison Yoga Project, we host meetings that you can come to. And so you're part of this Sangha. So you don't have to be alone in any of your experiences while you're facilitating. So let me find one of those links too. And while I find that link, James, I invited the audience and our community to start asking some questions. So I'll pose you a question now as well. I love this from Sonia. Have you, James, seen the change in attitude within the prison system, the staff and management, over the years of being willing to introduce programs? So have you seen a shift in the staff at prisons?
Well, definitely in California, definitely, because we've received grants from the Department of Corrections. The grant money actually comes from the state legislature that passes the money on to the Department of Corrections, but it has instilled and kind of motivated the Department of Corrections into more of a rehabilitative framework. And I think there's a greater, particularly in California, there's a greater recognition of the value of our trauma-informed yoga approach for addressing the issues that incarcerated people are dealing with. And then there are different, you'd have to go to different places where we have programs and get feedback. I know Nicole has definitely in Arkansas has experienced some positive feedback from staff at the institutions where she facilitates classes. And I know that we do get reports from varying places where we have programs. And definitely over 20 years, a tremendous difference. I mean, when I first went into San Quentin, it was the first yoga program at San Quentin. And the resistance from staff was pronounced. And it was brand new to incarcerated people, and they weren't really sure about yoga. What's this yoga all about? I thought yoga was for women. You could expect me to join a yoga class? So it definitely, and I think yoga in general, as yoga has evolved in the public domain, I think yoga has also generally evolved in the incarceration environment. And I'd like to think that our book has had something to do with that. We're now beyond 35,000 copies that have been sent to incarcerated people who have written and asked for that. So that's 35,000 books that are going into mailrooms and prisons that are being handled not only by incarcerated people, but that there's an awareness that this book exists. And I don't know if it's every state in the United States that have gotten the book, but just about. So I think our book, and I think the Prison Yoga Project just in general, is more recognized, is more, the Prison Yoga Project. And the question that you had asked me earlier, Blair, about, well, how did the trainings take place? After I wrote the book and started sending the book out, I had no idea how well received the book was going to be. I had no idea how much interest there was in yoga, other than, going into San Quentin and doing a class. And so the response to the book being available, that there was that much interest. And then I was invited to a conference in India to do a presentation on the work that I'd been doing. And when I first got the invitation, I thought it was a joke. I thought somebody was playing a trick on me. Oh yeah, you're invited to this conference. And it's like, yeah, I mean, I got to pay my way to go to India. And then I get referred to, well, if you have any questions about this, you can contact Satbir Khalsa, who is the researcher at Harvard, because he's involved with this project. And so I contacted him and said, oh no, it's paid. You're going to be paid to go. And so that was I think that was 2010. I was invited January 2010. Yes. The first international conference on yoga for health and something transformation. I can't remember. And all of a sudden I found myself on a stage showing slides of our work at San Quentin and talking about our work in San Quentin. And I look out to an audience of about 500 people from India who had come and were interested in the work that we were doing. And I thought after that, well, I guess I need to take the next step, which is to start to train people in what it is that I have done to build the program at San Quentin. So that's how that got started.
And so you were reaching out to yoga studios and communities. That was how we started, right? Is that what?
No, that's the other interesting thing. I didn't reach out. Yoga studios and people from different parts of the country reached out to me.
Wow.
And said, would you come and do a training here? My first one in Europe was Norway. I got contacted because, well, the woman that was working with us in New York, Annika Lucas, had created a training at Eddie Stern's Yoga Shala in Manhattan. And Eddie Stern is a very well-known Ashtanga yoga teacher. Well, his friend in Norway heard about me, and his friend in Norway, Alex Medin, was wanted to start a yoga program for incarcerated people. And he contacted me and said, would you come to Norway and teach a training? And if you come, we'll visit 5 or 6 different prisons and make presentations. And so that's how the whole work in Europe got started. How the whole work in Mexico got started was Luisa came to a training that I taught in Washington, D.C. in 2017, went back to Mexico and then said, could I come and visit you at San Quentin? And I said, yes. And she came and visited me in San Quentin, and then went back to Mexico and said, I want to start Prison Yoga Project Mexico. So it's been very little of me and us now reaching out saying, we want to do this and we want to do that. It's been much more by invitation.
Which is like, what a beautiful shift. And I think we're seeing that now in facilities too, like tying this into Sonia's question, right? That it's like us reaching out to facilities. Hi, are you interested in starting a program? And now facilities are reaching out to us. We want, or we need a yoga program.
Yes.
Do you have facilitators? And to tie in the training now too, I dropped the link, but all of our training is now virtual. It's about a 35-hour training online with 4 2-hour workshops that really get into the embodiedness of the trauma work that we offer, and the trauma informed work that we offer as well. So I dropped a link in the chat too. And we've got a couple more questions, so I'll keep rolling. Nicole asks, which I really love this question, James, can you share with us about any particular participants that have inspired you?
Oh, gosh. Well, I just heard last week, I got a letter from Mo Washington, who had been a longtime participant. You may not know his name, but you've seen his photo. And he was just found suitable for parole. And I know that Mo's probably done 26 years. And Mo's a bodhisattva. And Mo was a Crip. I mean, this is all, I'm not telling you anything that isn't public knowledge. Mo was a Crip and got involved in some kind of a gang related killing. And there's so many, I think you and I might've been talking about this yesterday, but when I think back on the years of going into San Quentin and the relationships that I established, there's definitely a core group of men that I feel I had the opportunity to really get to know. And most of them I've continued a relationship with since they've been out. And Mo is about the last one of this core group of, let's say, 20, 25 men over the years. Mo is one of the last guys to be released. The other one, who is still in my program at San Quentin and could be released this coming week, is Arthur Jackson. And Arthur's been in the program now for 6 or 7 years and has kind of been a co-facilitator of mine. And there's this feeling of, well, once Arthur is released, that's kind of it. And I'm not going to have another 20 years going into San Quentin. I can tell you that. And the population at San Quentin has changed significantly. So I feel that at this 20-year mark, there's some kind of completion, particularly around the men that I've worked with and gotten to know as closely as I've gotten to know. But there's a core group of 15 to 20 men, formerly life sentenced men, that I'm still in touch with.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I'm going to take this one question, it makes me laugh, and I would love to hear your response. And then I want to give the last few minutes to you just to speak to anything that hasn't been spoken to today. But this question comes from Carol, our program manager in Denver. James, as a beacon and founder of PYP, you've never made nor fostered a cult. How do you think this has happened? Avoiding the common pitfall of creating a club or like a cult of followers. So I would love to hear your response to that.
The first thing that comes to mind is I think I was gifted. I think my parental guidance, my parents, particularly my father, just was always really big on don't make a big thing about yourself. And then also I grew up a Catholic, and I was a very dedicated, I was a devout Catholic until I was about 20 years old. Devout meaning I went to mass every week, and I took it seriously. And there were some real gifts around that, in that it gave me the opportunity to experience devotion. And it gave me the opportunity to really fully look at the life of Christ as a life of kindness and compassion. That basically what I drew most from that experience, and from having studied his teachings, that at the core, it was this message of kindness and compassion. And of course, what motivated me to leave was all of the dogma and stuff that people created around it. But having observed that, having seen the pitfalls of people who put themselves in places of authority and basically set the rules, having seen that in the yoga and the Hindu studies that I did, a little bit less in the Buddhist studies, but at the same time, seeing, well, first of all, having an understanding that all of these people who were teachers, having this understanding that if something that a teacher said resonated with me, it was mine. It wasn't theirs. It was mine. And I didn't have to hear it that often. If I heard it and it sank in, it was like, oh, this is mine. And I've always felt that teachers share experience. And if their experiences resonate with somebody, then that experience becomes theirs. And so just this firm understanding that that's the way it goes. Maybe another part of it is I'm one of 6 children. Grew up one of 6, including a twin sister. So you kind of had to share the spotlight, you know?
I love that. Yeah. And I hear everything that you're saying. And I also think from, being part of the community is that, what I was hearing you share is that, you have an understanding of not pedestaling teachers, right? So there wasn't a will or a want for you to be in that pedestal position. And I think what comes through so much in the work that we offer the community is authenticity and integrity in leadership. And that stays away from creating an environment, right? Like, I think so many of us maybe have been part of spiritual communities that do feel a little bit that way or have leaned that way. And I think what differentiates this community a little bit is the authenticity and the intention for us being here too.
What I identify most with, and I don't have a T-shirt that says it, or I don't go, but I will share it. What I identify most with is being a karma yogi. Mm. And if you really, really investigate karma, if you really deeply involve yourself in karma, it's not about you. It's about doing whatever we can to relieve pain and suffering in the world. And in so doing, we relieve our own pain and suffering. And that's what I believe in most. If that's what I identify with most. Karma yoga. And I don't mind being called a karma yogi. But not broadcast, but so I think that does it for me.
Yeah, I have one more piece that I want to share that was in the comments. This is from Stacy. She says, I'm in Rockford, Illinois, the land of the Potawatomi, Ojibwe, Sac, and Fox people. The people I practice with in my county jail asked me to share their gratitude for your work, James. I'm honoring their request. I appreciate this community.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Please send them my best. And yeah.
So we're coming up on the hour. Thank you everyone for being here. And I just want to offer you the microphone again, James, for any last statements or anything that hasn't been said, to leave here in peace and our community.
The last thing is, I just would encourage you, please take the time every day for some time out with yourself. It doesn't have to be more than 10 minutes, 10 or 15 minutes, but to just basically give yourself the opportunity to disconnect from the busyness of your life. Everybody can do this. You can carve out 10 or 15 minutes to drop into yourself. Whether it's through movement or whether it's through seated meditation and breathing, but take that time to nourish that very fundamental core of who you are. Take that time. Yeah.
Thank you so much, James, for being here with us. And I think that we can all say congratulations on 20 years of doing this work. Thank you so much.
Thank you.